Why, hello there, old sports. Throughout the world of Hallownest, various grubs can be found trapped in jars, and upon rescuing all these grubs, you can return to their father to get rewards, and the final one of these rewards is the charm Grubberfly's Elegy. Taking inspiration from Zelda's sword beams that you can fire when at full health, this charm does pretty much the same thing. Your sword fires beams when you're at full health. Pretty simple. Now, back when I was doing a lot more Hollow Knight challenges, I had a friend and a few audience members who kept wanting me to do this challenge, and I just felt like it wouldn't be that interesting, so I didn't do it. But ultimately I was wrong, and recently, that same friend encouraged me to try this challenge once again, and here we are. And thankfully, or possibly unfortunately for me depending on your outlook, this challenge was much more difficult than I expected. Getting into the rules, I am only allowed to do damage via the beams from Grubberfly's Elegy, which means that I cannot hit enemies with my normal nail strikes. And I decided if I ever did hit an enemy with a normal nail strike, I would have to let myself get defeated by the enemies, and then respawn from there. Then, on top of that, by itself, the charm only actually activates if you're at full health, which means I can't take any damage. And I'm doing a lot less damage because the beams from the sword only do half of the damage of a normal nail strike, so the fights can be pretty difficult. So, starting out with the charm, can I defeat the Hollow Knight and take my place as its successor? Let's find out. Now, upon actually starting the game, I came to two conclusions. One, the sound of the sword beams is very annoying, and two, I should probably go grab Fury of the Fallen. Fury of the Fallen is a charm that is accessible before you even leave King's Pass if you can pogo off of the spikes leading to it, and it actually has a unique synergy with Grubberfly's Elegy. When you're at 1 HP, the beams reactivate again and also get stronger in terms of damage. Now, even though this technically means we only have 2 health states before we die where we can actually damage the enemies, that's better than not having it where we only have 1, so I figure I'm just going to keep it on the whole run along with Grubberfly's Elegy. And upon actually leaving the King's Pass and sitting on the Dirtmouth bench, I decided to overcharm with both of those charms because, again, the double damage isn't really going to impact me much anyways. While throughout the whole run, I did feel like I needed to stay as far away from the enemies as possible and try to use max range beam shots to comfortably stay safe and hit the enemies, I did figure out that if I was able to find that sweet spot, I was kind of able to just pepper enemies with the beams outside of their aggro range, which means that they wouldn't start their attacks, at least for the common enemies. They would kind of just stand there or slowly shamble towards me while I just chipped away at them. Another important thing that I learned early on is that since the beams don't actually give you any soul, I could figure out if I actually accidentally hit an enemy with my nail by seeing if my soul meter ever filled up a little. Because if it did, then I could figure out that I had failed and would need to respawn. And obviously if it didn't, I was just able to tell that it was a close call, and then I would just try to be a bit more cautious moving forward. But the thing is, due to the inherent danger of even trying to attack or defend myself from enemies, I figured out pretty quickly that I just shouldn't bother trying to fight enemies, obviously besides bosses and the mandatory combat gauntlets. Even a boss as seemingly simple and easy as Gruz's mother was actually kinda difficult at this point in the challenge, because I didn't really know how to space myself correctly, and due to the fact that the arena is so small, there was a very small margin for error. And then, even though I did beat the boss on my first try, it was extremely stressful the whole way through because I didn't know how the boss would respawn, so I was wondering if it would mess the fight up at all. And for the first time ever, the various little babies she hatches after she dies are actually a very big threat. Because there are so many of them and they bounce around so much, they take up a lot of space in the arena, meaning that you have another very slim margin of error on where you can hit them or where you can attack them from. And I actually almost died trying to do it in the process. So, yeah, that was very much close when it really didn't need to be. Or really shouldn't have been, I guess, is a better way to say it. Now, funnily enough, on my way to the False Knight battle, I figured out that if I stood in this little hallway, the Huskguard wouldn't be able to reach me because he's obviously too big to fit in there, and I could just safely swing away at him from the safety of my hallway. And even more funnily enough, this whole little strategy I figured out here to kill this one Huskard actually made a very big difference in a few minutes for this challenge. And by a few minutes, I mean for you guys, because I don't know how long this video is going to be, and if I went by how long the recording is, that wouldn't make any sense either. So, moving on. Moving on to the False Knight battle itself. The funny thing is that this was actually a tiny bit easier than the Gruzmother battle, just because this arena is so wide and you have a lot of room to move around in. And once I figured out that I should only hit him twice per attack, or I could only hit him twice after every attack, it eliminated any danger that I was ever in. Because before I figured that out, I actually took a hit because I was being not cautious, or I wasn't being cautious is the actual grammatically correct way to say that, but you understand what I mean, so I don't know why I'm going on this whole diatribe. Bad grammar aside, once Fury of the Fallen activated and I got a 15% damage boost roughly, this fight became even more of a joke, because obviously I'm doing more damage now, so it means I have to dodge for a lesser amount of time. And once the False Knight went down, I took the city crest from its corpse and moved on. Not into the Sanctuary, because I have no use for it, because I don't have any use for the spell. So I just went straight over to the Elder Balder guarding Green Path, and then used my sword beam range to just chip at it until it died. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but Green Path was basically just a walk in a very lush park, so I don't really have much to say here. Even the Moss Knights, which can sometimes be annoying for challenge runs due to their shields, are, well, they're not a problem at all, because like I said earlier, since I'm just outside of their aggro range, I can just pepper away at them with beams until they die, and they don't even really raise their shield, because again, I'm outside of their aggro range. Now, I did try to fight the Vengefly King for its Geo with nothing else, but the thing is, the way it works is it kind of tries to fly away from you, and it flies just outside of the range of my sword beams, which makes it very hard to hit the boss, and practically impossible to hit it safely. So after dying once or twice to the boss, I just gave up and left Zote to his fate. Moving on to Hornet, this fight was very bad, and by bad, I mean it was extremely tedious. This fight took 3.5 minutes, but oh boy, it did not feel like that. It felt like at least 10, maybe 7 on a good day. Now, this arena is by no means as small as the Gruzmother arena, but it's by no means big either. It's still a pretty small arena. Adding on the fact that I was still getting used to only using the Grubberfly's Elegy beams only, and this fight took a while, and that whole time it felt like I was on the edge of my seat. I was just about to die, even if I was at full health the whole time, because technically the fight would have gotten easier if I allowed myself to go down to 1 health, but it didn't really feel like that in the moment. It just felt like I had to use my extra health or my extra health state as a buffer, just in case something bad happened. So even though I'm really good at dodging this boss, I felt like I needed all the help I could get, so that maybe dragged the fight out a little longer than I wanted to, but ultimately I did win and get the dash in the end, but it was the first domino that fell in making me decide to not do the true ending and to just go for the basic Hollow Knight ending, because I figured if I had to fight Hornet 2 like this, that was going to be horrible, and I didn't even know if it was going to be possible. Moving on into the Fungal Wastes, I decide that the best way to enter is through the entrance in the Crossroads, because it gives us faster access to Leg Eater and the Shroomal Ogre Arena. With my current Geo amount, I have more than enough to buy access to his shop and Fragile Strength, which is
a surprise tool that can help us later.
Moving on to the Shroomal Ogre Arena, I want to get as many charm notches as I can for said surprise tool that will help us later. But the thing is that this arena is actually pretty difficult, and that's mostly just due to how the attacks overlap, and since I can't stay too close to one ogre at a time, that means they're both going to be doing their spitting attack instead of their head slam attacks, and that can get very dangerous very quickly, because there's sometimes where I could have just gotten bad luck and I could have just died because I wouldn't have had anywhere safe to stand. But thankfully, that did not happen, and I was able to claim the Charm Notch as my own and get a full heal in the process. From there, I had little to no difficulty getting through the rest of the Fungal Wastes, and getting to the Mantis Village, where I then stole the Mantis Claw as my prize. And then while I was there, I also decided that, hey, fighting the Mantis Lords is probably a good idea. Foreshadowing, it wasn't! So I decided to open up the entrance to the deeper part of the village, where I then decided, before fighting the Mantis Lords, to go grab the Lifeblood Cocoon above the arena. Now, unfortunately, it was only after I started the fight that I realized two things. First of all, Grubberfly's Elegy doesn't work if you have any lifeblood. Second of all, I haven't sat at a bench in a while, so if I die, I'm gonna have to go back a while. That isn't good. Now, since the Mantis Lords themselves move so fast, that means I can only get one hit off of them during their normal attacks, and occasionally two if they do the wall cling attack. And then also on top of that, technically you're supposed to listen to Quirrell's advice and go upgrade your nail before fighting the Mantis Lords, so add on to the fact that my attacks are only doing half the damage as normal, and this fight drags on a while. And unfortunately for me, I did not end up winning the fight, and I got sent back a while, so I decided I had to re-strategize. Now remember back before I fought False Knight how I found out I could safely just pick away at that one Husk Guard when I was in that little hallway area? Fun fact, that Husk Guard drops 45 Geo, which is probably one of the best ways we can grind Geo at this point in the game, and since my damage is so inconsistent or kinda difficult to get the maximum value out of at this point, that's probably the best way to grind Geo, is by going into that hallway, killing the guard, or sitting at the nearby bench in the stag station, rinse and repeat. So after killing 50 Husk Guards, I had enough Geo to not only buy the Lumafly lantern from Sly, but I also had enough Geo left over afterwards to purchase a nail upgrade. But regardless of if I can actually pay for the nail upgrade or not, I need to actually be able to reach the nailsmith. And right now, the easiest way to do that is to use the city crest I got from the False Knight and then go through the main gate. So that's exactly what I did. Now, like usual, the first nail upgrade is the most impactful in terms of what percentage increase you get in terms of damage, and then by that I mean our damage almost doubles from this nail upgrade alone. So, we're doing a lot more damage, combine that with Fury boosting us occasionally, and we're feeling a lot more comfortable in our damage potential when we need to. And I was actually able to defeat the little gauntlet that you have to deal with before reaching the city storeroom stag station pretty easily. I did it on my first try. Now that I have both a nail upgrade and more importantly the Lumafly lantern, I decide now is a good time to go enter the Crystal Peaks to go get the Crystal Heart so I can super dash so I can reach Monomon later. Now, like I've said before, and I'll probably say again, the Crystal Peaks is more of a platforming focused area as opposed to a combat focused area. Most of the enemies here are more obstacles than anything, and some of the enemies are specifically invincible to your normal nail strikes. And I guess that also includes the beams in this case. So you're more incentivized to just avoid the enemies and treat them like obstacles you're supposed to move around instead of go through. Now, at least for this run, the main exception to the not really having to deal with fighting rule is the Crystal Guardian, because I wanted a safe bench in the heart of the Crystal Peaks, so in case I died to any of the platforming later, I would have a safe place to respawn, and then also the Geo that the Guardian itself will drop will come in handy later. And it's always just good to have money in this game. There's never really a point where you don't want money. Speaking on the boss itself, this boss wasn't actually too difficult because since it stays stationary to fire its laser beams at you, you can very comfortably space yourself where you're not going to hit it with normal nail strikes, and while it is a bit tankier compared to what we would like, it still goes down consistently, so I'd rather take a longer fight that is easier to execute than a shorter fight that is more intense to execute, at least to a point. I don't want to have to deal with Hornet again, that was hellish. Anyways, once I was done with that, I was able to maneuver through the rest of the Crystal Peaks until I got to the final platforming section. And thankfully, I've done this more than enough to be able to do it comfortably and without getting hit, I say, before getting hit right at the end, like an idiot. Regardless, even if I can't use my sword beams until I rest at another bench, I'm at least able to grab the Crystal Heart, which is the main reason I even came here in the first place, so mission accomplished in that sense. Now, even though this probably doesn't make much sense and it didn't really make sense to me in the moment, I had a feeling that now would be a good time to go to Deep Nest. I don't know why anyone would think it's ever a good time to go to Deep Nest, but here I am. Now, kinda like Crystal Peaks, the Deep Nest isn't really meant to be a combat-focused area. Its challenge mostly comes from getting lost and trying to find your way around in the dark, especially if you don't have a lantern. But since I know this game better than the back of my own hand, that's not really a concern. Now, what was actually a concern was trying to get the tram pass, because every time I would almost get it, and the time I actually did get it, the Carver hatchers would kill me. So what would happen is I would go back and try to get my shade, I would accidentally hit all of the enemies while trying to retrieve my shade, so I would die again, rinse and repeat, slowly dragging my shade closer and closer back to the bench, until I was eventually able to escape. So from there, I made my way back down to the tram, took it into the center underneath the ancient basin, and then went and fought the little Moloch enemies for the pale ore, so I could upgrade my nail yet again and get another damage boost. And after a couple tries, I was able to get the pale ore, even if I did die immediately after getting it, which means I had to go on a whole nother journey to get my shade back, but that's really tedious, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Just know, it was extremely painful. Now that I have my grubby little paws on the pale ore, and I'm underneath the City of Tears in the ancient basin, I decide to climb up the elevator shaft, open the way to the western side of the City of Tears, and then go sit at the stag station to set my spawn point, before making my way back over to the nailsmith and upgrading my nail for the final time in this run. After upgrading my nail, I head back to the Kink station, but instead of going back to Dirtmouth or using the stag station at all, I instead go north and then go up to the elevator that takes me up to the resting grounds. Obviously, once I'm there, I head straight towards the Dreamer Shrine to go get the Dream Nail, and then from there, I head back to Dirtmouth. Then from there, I head down through the crossroads over to the little acid area where you find the grub, and then do the acid skip with Crystal Dash to enter the Fog Canyon, where I can then reach the teacher's archives. Now, just like usual, Umu is extremely annoying, and this of course is due to the fact that it spends most of the fight invulnerable. And then when you can attack it, you can only attack it for a few moments, and since we can't use any heavy damaging maneuvers like using spells for example, we just have to swing at it 3 or 4 times, then the bubble goes back up, and then we're back to dodging and waiting. And due to the fact that I functionally can only take 1 hit before dying, I have to play this fight very carefully, which drags it out even longer. This fight may have only taken me about 3 attempts, but each of those attempts took 3 minutes at least, so I'd spent at least like 10 or 12 minutes just fighting Umu for this run. At least after all this time, I finally got more consistent at dodging Umu's attacks, so if one good thing came out of this challenge, I had to practice it more and I got to show off that I actually can dodge those attacks. Anyways, after Umu dies, I die myself by falling into the acid before returning and then finally killing Monomon. 1 dreamer down, 2 to go. With Monomon done and dusted, I return back to the City of Tears and climb up the Watcher's Spire until I get to the Watcher Knights. Now, I don't know if this counts towards the challenge or against it, but I did decide to break the chandelier just for convenience sake, if anything else. Now, remember how I said both the Hornet fight and Gruzmother, surprisingly, were both very stressful fights? Yeah, Umu was also kind of stressful, but at least I knew it was only going to be like 3 or 4 minutes long. This fight was also 3 or 4 minutes long, but it felt a lot stupider, so I felt like there was more RNG involved, therefore any good attempt was worth more, therefore more stress. Does that make any sense? If it doesn't, I don't care, we're moving forward. Now, the reason this fight specifically was so much more stressful compared to every other fight in the game besides the Hollow Knight is obviously because there's 2 Watcher Knights on the field at once most of the time, bar the beginning and end of the fight. When I have to keep track of 2 Watcher Knights at once, that becomes a lot more stressful, and it becomes a lot more taxing on my mental bandwidth. And then also keep in fact that sometimes one of them can be off screen, so you kind of just have to guess. You kind of just have to be like, well, I guess I'll jump, or I'll be ready to jump, or I'll keep my finger on the jump button closer so I can press it immediately if I see one rocketing towards me off the edge of the screen. That would be unfortunate. Also keep in mind that the sword beams don't go through the Watcher Knight shell when they're balled up, so you can only attack them when they're either standing still or doing their slash attack. And the thing is, they're not going to do their slash attack very often if you're not close to them. And I don't want to be close to them because I don't want to accidentally hit them. So most of the time they're just going to be rolling at me, which is unfortunate. Now, somehow, I managed to do this fight not only first try, but no hit as well, because I went into the fight on 1 HP and left on 1 HP. So, I have no idea how that happened. I guess I just locked the fuck in for no reason on the Watcher Knights of all bosses. But I'm very glad I did, I guess, because I feel like this is one of those bosses that would either take 1 try or 20. Because like I said, even if I did beat this the first time no hit, it very well could have gone differently if the Watcher Knights just rolled different RNG. Because if they both were off screen at once and I couldn't get to them fast enough, or if one of them did the bounce while one of them did the horizontal roll, that could have been bad. Or there's just so many different ways this fight can screw you over without you knowing what to do in the moment, and especially when your nerves are higher, that can be even worse. So I don't know, this was a close fight even though it was no hit, if that makes any sense. Anyways, with his guards down, Lurien is susceptible to me slashing him in the face with a sword, and then we go from 1 dreamer down to 2. 1 dreamer left. Now I decided to go fight Monomon before Lurien, because then after fighting Lurien, I could then go down the elevator shaft and then take the tram back to Deep Nest, so I would only have to make it halfway through the area instead of the full way through the area to get to Hera in the distant village. Now, while most of Deep Nest can just be dodged, or most of the enemies in Deep Nest can just be dodged past, the enemies in the Beast's Den, there's a few of them that you actually have to go through, mostly the Stalking Devout enemies. They will block the hallways or corridors or whatever you want to call them, and you have to kill them to get past. And funnily enough, those enemies suck a lot. They'll just stand there, stalling, and then they won't open up their faceplates. And even if I wanted to open up their faceplates to get them vulnerable, the beams from my sword don't do anything, so I have to wait for them to do it on their own, and then try to get 1 or 2 slashes in on them before rinsing and repeating. So it's very tedious. Now, despite my tone of voice, I am actually kind of grateful for this, because I feel like usually Beast's Den feels less dangerous than the rest of Deep Nest, when if anything it should feel more dangerous. You're literally in the deepest depths of Deep Nest, where the spiders are most concentrated and choreographed. Or not choreographed, they're most, like, organized, I guess is a better way to say it. So to feel like the area is just a quick thing you run through feels kind of dumb, especially considering it's supposed to be the last line of defense for Hera. But even if it is slightly more difficult than normal, the guards still fall before my blade, and Hera goes down. All of the dreamers are dead, and it's time to fight the Hollow Knight. Yeah, it didn't go very well. I died a couple dozen times. But thankfully, not all hope is lost. I might not have to just get good. I have a secret mouse tool that could help us later, and later is now. After recovering my shade for the umpteenth time, I go back down through the crossroads over to Salubra's charm shop, and after buying most of her charms, I have enough charms in my inventory to buy 2 more notches. And what that means is I have 1 extra slot I can do something with. I can have both Fury of the Fallen, Grubberfly's Elegy, and I have 1 more slot left, especially if I'm overcharming. And what I choose to use for that is Fragile Strength. Now, skipping past the boring math stuff, combining all of our multipliers from Fury of the Fallen, Fragile Strength, and the multiplier from Grubberfly's Elegy, we are now doing 15 damage, which is 2 more damage than the nail upgrade we actually currently have. So I guess we're doing more damage from the beams if we didn't have any charms and we're swinging normally, but technically we could still be swinging our nail normally and doing more damage, but we can't do that because that's against the rules. I'm getting off topic. Let's go fight the Hollow Knight again. And with that, I have completed the challenge and proven that yes, you can in fact beat the Hollow Knight without using any damage except the Grubberfly's Elegy beams, if you give yourself the charm from the start, but that doesn't count for Blatant cheating aside, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for spending some of your time here today, and it really means the world to me. I know I said I was going to make either a Fear and Hunger video or at least the Painful video next, but those games are hard, so it's taking me a little bit. I apologize. And this video was already about like half done, so I figured I'd just finish it, especially considering either one of those videos probably won't do too well numbers wise, so might as well do something that will do decent first, haha. But regardless, I appreciate any and all support you all show me. It means the world. It really does. I'm so thankful I have a group of people who want to see my stupid little shenanigans play out. So, if you could like, comment, and subscribe and join this little gaggle of people, I would appreciate it. And of course, I have to thank Golden1, Somebody, Wally73, Sven Biscuit, and Amaran98 for their continued financial support on both YouTube and Patreon. It really does mean the world. With all that being said, I think I've blabbered on long enough. You all have a good day, good night, and next time I'll see you, I'll either be doing a Fear and Hunger video or a Lisa video, so please share your opinions down below on what you want to see in that realm. And with all that being said, have a good day, and good night.